Chris Cuomo here. Appreciate you finding me on NewsNation. So we had a major event in the Middle East war. People there and here cheering the news that the IDF killed the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. You'll hear him called Sinwar. There's no doubt that this will be a boost to Israelis who rightly want the man who helped lead the October 7th massacre. And they wanted him removed as a threat. And now he is. And many here may understand that desire, as America had a similar moment in its battle to avenge 9/11. We all remember 10 years in of hunting, 10 long years. Then came the dramatic moment where Osama bin Laden was taken out in Pakistan. And remember, the leader of Pakistan, he actually told me personally, no knowledge of where Osama bin Laden may be, despite the fact that the guy was right under his nose. And I was there covering the reaction at Ground Zero where 9/11 took place when the news of Osama bin Laden hit. Take a listen.
You know, the bottom line is the police knew, everybody knew we needed this here. I mean, if you look behind us, Ground Zero has been rebuilding or trying to for 10 years. But so many of the families of the victims of 9/11 are still emotionally in ruins. But now with the word of Osama bin Laden, they came back to Ground Zero to remember their loved ones and to do something many thought they'd never be able to do. Celebrate triumph after 9/11.
And I meant what I said. Americans needed to know he was gone, as I'm sure many people in Israel and here wanted the Hamas leader gone. But the question becomes, as it was then, it is now. What does it mean? Depends who you listen to. Vice President Harris sees a major development.
Hamas is decimated and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Now, my critique would be one, order, right? The hostages have to come first. And also, second, the how. I mean, we get the ambition. Everybody wants each and all of those things, right? Who seem to be a member of the two-state solution coalition. But how? How do you get there? Now, we heard similar sentiments echoed from Democratic members of Congress, expressing pleasure at the news and asserting America's commitment to the cause of Israeli sovereignty and safety. Oddly, former President Trump has had nothing to say except to just keep attacking Harris and the media and all this stuff as if, what he's been doing. Another example, perhaps, of Trump not using an opportunity to expand his base to show his understanding of the issues here in the final stretch of this election. We'll see. Now, for my money, the Israeli prime minister was probably the most realistic in his assessment.
Today, the mastermind of this day of sheer evil is no more. Yahya Sinwar is dead. While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end.
Now, it's hard to argue that he isn't right, but there's going to be no peace anytime soon after this, right? It's a retaliatory environment. And let's not forget, Israel still has Iran in its sights. And as we learned after the celebration of Osama bin Laden being dumped at sea, the snake that we thought he was the head of turned out to be more of a worm. It just grew a new head, a new leader, and found a new group. Remember, it was the Taliban, then it was Al-Qaeda, then AQP, then ISIS, then ISIS-K. The war raged on for another decade, ending in a very unsatisfying exit from Afghanistan on President Biden's watch. So, taking out OBL was not the decisive moment that America and her allies had hoped for. Might this be different? Well, Hamas still has Ismail Yahadina. He is its putative head, right? And there are many other proxy groups doing Iran's bidding, and of course, Iran itself. Moreover, Sinwar is out, but the hostages are still not home, and we do not know what this occurrence will mean for them or for a potential path to peace anytime soon. Again, I'm not suggesting this isn't meaningful. okay? I'm not trying to rain on a parade. I'm trying to be reasonable. We've lived this before. We've lived it many times over in the Middle East, and we lived it in America, specifically in our own experience after 9/11. I'm just saying you can't really know what it means for an ultimate end, not right now. And it is telling that while some American lawmakers are celebrating the death of this lead terrorist, some are not. And I've learned in this business that often it's more instructive who's staying quiet sometimes. You may learn more from what is not said and from whom than the opposite. Where is AOC? Where is Tlaib? Where is Omar? Why aren't they mentioning the death of a terror leader behind October 7th? The most pressing question, though, for me tonight is how do the people who matter most in this conflict process this development? The family of the hostages. And we have with us American family of an American hostage still waiting for their son. Okay? Now, to set it up, when announcing Sinwar's death, Prime Minister Netanyahu appealed directly to terrorists still holding hostages in Gaza with a little bit of a different approach. Listen.
Hamas is holding 101 hostages in Gaza. Israel is committed to doing everything in our power to bring all of them home. And Israel will guarantee the safety of all those who return our hostages. But to those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice.
Just hasn't happened yet, right? Now, the parents of Israeli-American hostage, 23-year-old Omer Nutra, is going to join us. Omer was born and raised here, New York City. Moved to Israel 4 years ago because he wanted to help defend the country. He joined the IDF. He was taken hostage as a soldier by Hamas on October 7. His parents join us now, Orna and Ronan. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Orna, I'll start with you. What does it mean to you that Sinwar is now out of the equation? What do you think it means for your son and the others?
Well, first, Chris, Sinwar deserved to die. No doubt about it. He had a lot of blood on his hands. He was the orchestrator and the leader of the horrendous attack on October 7th, which murdered over 1,200 Israelis, of them 45 Americans. And he was, directly responsible for the taking of the hostages and for the fact that our son has been there for 377 days today. So that needed to happen. But we're very anxious. We feel that, this is a turning point and that all sides, America and Israel, need to act really quickly before everything evolves into chaos in the Gaza Strip. And we feel that the lives of the hostages are in danger more than ever at this moment.
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable understanding. Of course, I'm not going to disrespect your situation by saying something that is falsely optimistic, okay? You have to believe, Ronan, that every action has a reaction. And the only thing that these people have had from the beginning are the hostages. That's why they took them, because they knew what was going to happen if they had just run back across the line. So how are you processing this, Ronan, and figuring out what comes next, balancing the satisfaction of knowing the man responsible for being one of the leaders is gone, but now what do they do in response?
Chris, obviously, we welcome this significant achievement of the IDF. They've been hunting him for over a year now, and it's long overdue. As Orna said, though, we are concerned, and looking at the political situation, both in Israel and in the United States, there are different hurdles that we have to cross. Here, it's an election year, obviously, and both sides don't want to ruffle the feathers too much. While in Israel, it's a survival for Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Right.
And so far, he's been holding strong on defeating Hamas to the ground. I think today is a real opportunity for him to say, most of our goals in Gaza are achieved, but one, releasing the hostages. So we need to do everything possible at this stage to cut a deal. It's a deal with the devil. It's a deal that's not going to be a good deal for Israel. But guess what? They took 240 hostages. They're still holding 101. 7 of them are American. So we expect both the prime minister in Israel and United States administration to do everything possible right now put the pressure on Qatar, on Egypt, on Turkey, on Israel, and of course on Hamas to reach a deal. The time is now, and there is an opportunity.
Very wise words, obviously coming from your heart as well as your head. We see the 377 sticker on your shirts. We will not forget your son or the others. We will carry it through with them being the priority as they should be. Orna, Ronan, I hope something comes from this that helps bring Omer home. And I hope
Thank you. We want him back to New York. We want him back in our arms. It's been far long overdue.
Well, I look forward to meeting him with you, God willing. Take care.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, now let's talk about from a military perspective and how Hamas may respond to this. With someone, you just can't get anyone who understands the organization better. The son of a founding member of Hamas who defected to fight for Israel after he learned what Hamas had become about while imprisoned with his father. Okay? He's the author of From Hamas to America, Mossab Hassan Youssef, sometimes referred to as the Green Prince. My friend, thank you for responding to my call to come on and help us understand this. What does it mean that he's gone? What are you concerned about that Hamas will do in response?
The man who orchestrated and executed October 7 genocide is gone. But this is not the end of the war. And my eyes are on Tehran, the head of the snake. As long as Ayatollah, the one who sent thousands of Iranian children to sweep minefields as a strategy, the same one who has sacrificed Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and he's willing to sacrifice the entire world for his political ambition as long as he's still alive, we are going to have a problem in the Middle East. Today is not a day to celebrate. And I saw the presidential nominee, Kamala, saying regarding that this is over. It's not over. She's trying to win the votes, and we are trying to win the war. It's the responsibility of every free person in the world to put an end for this Islamic Republic that has been funding Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis by the American taxpayer money. It's insanity. Everybody is escaping the responsibility. And now we don't have Sinwar in Gaza. Most of Hamas is destroyed. So why don't we pressure the Egyptian army to go into Rafah? If Israel cannot go into Rafah without huge civilian casualty, why don't we send the Egyptian army? We have been funding the Egyptian army $1.5 billion annually. Why cannot we pressure them to tell them, go get the job done and bring the hostages back? Because I am certain that the Gazans will not kill the Egyptian soldiers if they go into Rafah today to locate the hostages and bring them back to their families.
Is that because Israel doesn't want Egyptian interference and control of an area that they have to make sure is clear for their own safety?
This is an exceptional situation. If Egypt has the intention, with coordination with Israel, the United States, and the rest of the world, to go on one mission to bring the hostages back and remove Hamas fleeing forces from power and give the people their freedom back, then there is no problem. I don't think Israel would oppose that if it's actually coordinated with Israel.
What do you think about the ability of Hamas to, whether it's Ishmael or any of the other ones or just one of the other proxy groups, to just step up and fill the space as we saw after America took out Osama bin Laden? Is that your concern, that this is more of a worm than a snake, and when you cut off one piece of it, it just grows in the other direction?
Look, Hamas, you can consider Hamas over. They have fleeing forces, and they can cause lots of trouble. Now, anybody who's going to replace Sinwar is going to die. Actually, Khalid Mash'al is a dead man walking. All Hamas leaders in Turkey, in Qatar, in Tehran, in Beirut, wherever they are dead men walking. I said this from the beginning of the war. On October 7, they crossed all the red lines. What they did is unforgivable, is unforgettable. So it doesn't matter who's going to come in office. All of them are wanted. All of them are on the Mossad hits list. And let me take it even farther. Ayatollah is on the Mossad's hit list, and the rest of the Iranian guards. For the next weeks, for the next months, could be for the next years, we are going to witness the elimination of everybody who orchestrated, funded, planned October 7. We cannot afford legitimizing such savages who killed people indiscriminately, who kidnapped infants, who kidnapped Holocaust survivors. Today is a good day. Today is a great day that we eliminated Sinwar. We have waited for so long, and you could see him, and you could see his nature. He's a coward. He's a coward. He was defeated, he was humiliated, and he had a very ugly death. But this is not the end of the story. We have lots of work to do. And I personally will not rest until I see the Ayatollah, Hezbollah, Houthis, all Iranian proxies defeated and removed from power. And by the way, it's just a matter of time. I am sure there are people in Gaza that want freedom from Hamas. Enough is enough. More than 36 years of slavery to a sick ideology. And the rest of the world has legitimized them as a resistant movement. And I've been saying since the beginning of the war, this is not resistance. Killing, raping, looting, kidnapping, this is not resistance. Palestine is non-existential. The world needs to understand that Palestine was never a country. It has never been occupied. This lie must come to an end. And if the Arabs who live in the region, if they drop their violence, if they drop their evil practice of sacrificing civilians, children, for political and financial gain, once they come to realize that this strategy is a dead end, the moment they understand this, then they can coexist with Israel. And Israel has no problem coexisting with the rest of the Arab world.
Well, but you said it right there. I mean, we're not going to have a straight military solution to this, no matter how effective Mossad is. There's a financial component, there's a political component, and that's why it's continued the way it has. But I appreciate your perspective and the power behind it, as always. My friend Mossab Hassan Youssef, thank you for coming in and explaining the state of play in this moment.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. And again, it's not just, try to make light of the situation. It's not to try to not recognize the significance. It's about, well, what really is that significance? We've lived this before, there and here. Now, the election is going to matter. The next leader is going to have to take this situation on. And my suggestion is, I know you guys are trying to figure out which one of these two do you find to be more tolerable. It's a nose-pinching vote. Bill O'Reilly here to discuss with me who's winning the least stinky vote. It is close. For a big reason, we're divided. And that's by design in the two-party system, by the way. This is where it gets you in the battle of which is worse. And the analysis is increasingly which of these two candidates will be found to be more tolerable for the next 4 years. And while many may seem, well, then Trump should lose because he's such an unpopular person, he's not by just about any metric you can find. This is knotted up. Yesterday, Kamala Harris did her first interview on Fox News. About the same time, Trump held a town hall among Latino voters. And I set them up as a side-by-side, as distillations of what bothers people about both of these candidates.
When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
It was a little disturbing to me. What happened during January 6th and the fact that, you waited so long to take action while your supporters were attacking the Capitol.
Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said, peacefully and patriotically. Nothing done wrong at all. Nothing done wrong. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands. It could have been the largest group I've ever spoken before.
She doesn't answer the question. Now, you could argue that it's when did you stop beating your wife type of question. And Trump answers the question, but it's just completely lies. So which of these two will wind up being less bothersome? Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly for his take on the candidates in the state of play. It's good to see you. To the battle of the bottom, who do you think is ahead and why?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way myself. There have been far worse candidates than both Harris and Trump. I was mystified, I love that word, mystified, by why Kamala Harris even went into Fox News, because her strategy was so clear. I'm not going to answer any question. You remember the Western, I think it was John Ford, Western Treasurer of Sierra Madre, where the bad guys, I don't need no stinking questions. It was like the same thing. She came in and she dodged all 10 questions. Bear asked 10 questions, and she didn't answer any of them. And some of them were important, like the one you just showed, because that goes to, were you telling the truth to the American people about Joe Biden, which he clearly was not. Now, on the Donald Trump side, I'm not a defender of Donald Trump. In fact, he's mad at me now because he doesn't think that I'm supporting him. I don't support anybody. I'm a journalist. He sees it this way. He, in a speech, said, please demonstrate peacefully and patriotically, which he did, which is why he wasn't charged with insurrection or anything like that. And then he sees it that most of the people didn't invade the Capitol, and all they wanted to do was show him love, like the Love Boat. And that's it for him. He doesn't go further than that.
I know, but that's delusional.
You do. Well, I don't know if it's delusional rather than he doesn't want to go further.
Well, put it this way.
Just as Kamala Harris doesn't want to answer any questions.
If you had swapped it and the same number of black guys had run into the Capitol and done what he did, what was done there, he would have talked about nothing else until this very minute. Helter skelter and look at this and what's going on. Right? So it must have been.
No, I don't engage in the skin color.
But
stuff.
if that had happened,
I don't know that
he would have seen it very differently than he does when they're his people going on. And he says it was a day of love. Right. It wasn't a day of love. We both know that.
Well, maybe you have Miss Cleo's DNA, but I don't. I'm going to deal with the facts right now.
Yeah, we saw the facts. We all watched it play out.
Don't you find it fascinating?
Go ahead.
Okay, fine.
Go ahead.
Let's just deal with reality now for just a little while.
Okay.
You have interviewed very powerful people. I've interviewed 6 presidents, all right, and countless people who wanted to be president. And when you do an interview like that, you have to have a strategy. You have to anticipate what the person across from you is going to say. All right? So Bret Baier did his job, particularly in the context of where he works. He had to interrupt. Kamala Harris, I'll submit to you, came in and her advisors told her, don't answer any questions. Just say whatever you want to say. You don't need those stinking questions. And B, try to make Baier interrupt you so we can throw out to our surrogates that he's doing it because you're a woman, which is exactly what happened. All right? So Harris comes in there with that mindset. And as I said on this program before, you underestimate Kamala Harris at your peril. She's a disciplined woman. All right? It's hard to shake her out of what she has memorized and what she's going to do. I could have done it because I would have narrated the Q&A in real time. I would have said to her and the audience, you're not answering that question, Madam Vice President. Do you want another question or would you like another shot at it? Very politely, but I would have framed it in the sense that she's not asking anything. Now, she spoke on camera for 17 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, this is my staff's precision. All right, she used 50% of that time to bash Trump, the same way she has bashed him 5,000 times. Does she feel that's going to get her one vote? See, this is, and maybe you can explain it to me.
I will.
I don't know why she did the interview. I don't know why. She didn't get any votes out of it. She looked weak in the sense that she couldn't answer basic questions.
That's a little Miss Cleo that you say she didn't get any votes, right? How do you know what she got and what she didn't get?
No, I don't know. I don't think she would get any votes from that exposition. All right?
Right.
Look, when you're saying to the American people, I don't know anything I would change about the Biden administration, and you've got an Afghan surrender that led to the deaths of 13 military people and diminishment of American power all over the world, and you wouldn't change that? You wouldn't change a thing about it? That's territory that's way beyond rationality.
I just think that it's so, you get frustrated with this sometimes, and I understand it somewhat, but it is a relative assessment. And the reason that it's so close, and she may win the election, is because if that's what matters to voters, they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. The man lies when the truth is a better story. He owns nothing that is not favorable for him. So if that's what you're worried about with Kamala Harris, I don't think she's really answering the question. I don't know that she can be trusted. How does she lose the election if that's the basis of measurement? Especially, she spent half her time bashing him. I'll take your staff's word at it. They're strong staff. I mean, it's still got to be 50% less than he spends, Bill. I mean, he hasn't even talked about killing the head of Hamas because he's too busy bashing her for having edited interviews, just like his are.
Look, you say he says lies, all right?
Yeah.
You say he won't cede anything.
Yeah.
Well, she won't cede anything either.
I know.
She doesn't admit one mistake.
I get the analysis.
Not one. So then it comes down to two things. No, he doesn't admit a mistake. As I wrote in my book, The United States of Trump, his own son said, the reason my father never admits a mistake is because he thinks it shows a sign of weakness. And that's the truth.
Weird for a Christian.
Here's what it comes down to. Kamala Harris and her advisors are running on the same strategy that Biden ran on in 20. That there'll be enough Americans who hate Trump, not love her, but hate him, that they'll vote her into office. That's their strategy.
Yeah.
I do not believe that's a winning strategy.
I don't disagree.
Because of the money factor, cash in your pocket factor.
Yeah.
Working Americans are suffering.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris has no grasp of the economy whatsoever. If she did, she would have put it out there. She has plans. And you know what her central plan is? That I'm going to give every first-time home buyer in the United States $25,000, a check from the government. Number one, that's unconstitutional. Number two, it would never get through Congress. And number three, we have a $35 trillion debt that would quickly rise to $40 trillion. That will never happen. That's your plan? That's your policy outlook? That's like me saying, I'm going to go to everybody's house. All right, if you watch the No Spin News, I'm going to go, whoever watches the No Spin News, I'm going to go to your house and cure any malady you have. You have diabetes? I'm coming, I'm going to cure it. Okay, if you watch my show. It's insane. But that's what she's putting out there.
Yeah.
And you were right, and I hate to say that. It pains me. I got just a head like that. You were right to say that Americans in the middle are going, both of them, what? But it's happened before in our history. And my vote is going for Trump because he ran the country effectively, in my opinion, real wages up 7% for 4 years. January 6th, no excuse. But I'm going for experience rather than gibberish. And Kamala Harris, her entire presentation, 100%, is gibberish.
Well, I think that there are a lot of people who feel the same way about him. And that this economy is in recovery mode in part because of his mismanagement of the early phase of the pandemic, which absolutely extended it. And
I don't believe that for a second.
Well, but that's what changed the numbers. The pandemic changed the numbers. He denied its existence.
Of course the pandemic did.
He said the cold would be gone by Easter.
He had nothing to do with mismanaging the economy.
He was in charge. No. The pandemic took care of the economy. You had to do what you had to do. I'm not saying that he made changes to the economy.
So he didn't mismanage COVID.
Sure he did.
He got the sainted vaccine as fast as any human being could get.
That was his signature achievement. He just won't talk about it because most of his supporters are anti-vaxxers.
Fine. And when he left office, inflation was 1.4%.
Yeah.
End of story, Cuomo.
I know. I think that's a really compelling argument. I think the tariffs had a big part to do with the inflationary environment, but you got to make that case to the voters, and they're not making it. So I don't disagree with you. That pain in the pocket may well decide this in conjunction with something we haven't discussed, which is immigration, which is also a potential kill shot for Harris. So I think that it's no surprise to me it's this close, and I look forward to watching you unfold in real time on election night. Bill O'Reilly, thank you for your perspective as always. Appreciate you. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. When we come back, all right, they're talking a lot about race. They're talking about how it may come down to the Arab vote or which way Michigan goes. I don't know. I think they're playing too much small ball. I do believe that you have to look at what is happening with one of the largest aspects of our population, young males. Why do young males seem to be gravitating to the right? I got somebody who knows. You talk about a better mind. Author, business guru, thought leader, Scott Galloway. Professor G joins me. I learned what I know about this from him. Now you can too. Better be talking about young men. They vote. Why might they feel alienated from or abandoned by the Democratic Party? Specifically, Gen X, right? So Gen X, me, Gen Z, him, Mo, who I'm not letting you see right now because he doesn't look closely enough at me when I'm on camera. Why might this be going on? The co-host of the Raging Moderates podcast with Jessica Tarlow, the Pivot podcast, Kara Swisher, Professor G, Scott Galloway, thought leader, friend of mine. It is good to see you, handsome. This is getting traction with people, even though it is not a new idea for you. Why do you think it is in play right now, and what do you think people need to notice?
Always good to be with you, Chris. So look, this election will largely be seen as a referendum on women's rights, I think, but it may be won based on which party can paint a more aspirational vision of masculinity and attracts more young male voters. If you look at what's happening, men are going more conservative. But I think if you dig a little bit deeper, you find that young men are very responsive or accepting or supportive of gender rights. They're not naturally conservative. What I think's happened is I think they're moving away from the Democratic Party, and that is if you go to the dnc.org website, it has a section called Who We Serve, and it lists 16 demographic groups ranging from veterans to seniors to Black Americans to the disabled to Asians, Pacific Islanders. It basically lists 76% of the population. The only group it doesn't list, Chris, is young men. And there's no group in America that's fallen further faster than young men. 4 times more likely to kill themselves, 3 times more likely to be addicted, 12 times more likely to be incarcerated. So it's not that the Republican Party appeals to young men. It's that they don't feel seen by the Democratic Party. To their credit, I think Walz paints a nice vision of masculinity, more about protection and service than the Republican vision of kind of strength and toughness. But I would argue that some of the last few remaining, if you will, swing voters are disproportionately young men.
And when you think about what resonates and how that would redound into messaging, what do they need to hear?
Well, that they feel seen. Several programs.
I don't even know what that means, Scott. Like, I'm a Gen Xer. I didn't want to be seen because usually I was going to be hit. So, I didn't have the same need to be seen that these guys do. What do they want?
Yeah, something tells me you did more hitting than being hit. But anyways, Chris, look, vocational programming, more freshman seats at colleges, a recognition that young families are struggling, investments in industries that used to have more jobs that were an on-ramp for the middle class without a college degree, wood shop, metal shop, schools that aren't as biased against young men. I think there's just essentially acknowledging that young men are struggling and that there should be some more programs around keeping men in young men's lives. But we have, if you were to go into a morgue and find 5 people who had died by suicide and 4 of the 5 were of any special interest group, we'd weigh in with programs, we'd weigh in with services. But because of the privilege you and I recognized, we're holding 19-year-old men accountable and not providing them with the services and, quite frankly, the attention they need, facing some of the really uphill battles they are facing. And the numbers are staggering. And you know who's leading this dialogue, Chris? Mothers. This is what you hear from a single mother with 2 daughters and 1 son. And I get these emails every day. One daughter's at Penn, the other's at Chicago and PR. And my son is in the basement vaping and playing video games. People feel this across America, and Trump, to his credit, tried to embrace the manosphere sooner. And now they're getting walls out there and saying this is about protection and service. I'm a football coach. They got the team together when we heard the LGBTQ community was coming under fire and being bullied. And I rallied a group of men. Why? Because men's first instinct should be to protect. He protected the nation, served for 24 years, and that's what men do. But I do think this is, if you will, a battle over young men right now.
But I'll tell you, even when you say it, like, my spidey sense starts to go. Like, when you're saying men are supposed to protect, in my mind, it's like, uh-oh, they're coming. You know, people, what do you say, women don't protect? And, you know, this is toxic masculinity, and the whole system has been set up for these same guys that you're saying we should feel bad about. And it's like, what about everybody else? It's the easiest for these guys that you're saying are really their own problem.
Look, the far right has a vision of masculinity that, quite frankly, is just not aspirational. It's be coarse, it's be cruel, it's be, quite frankly, a little bit misogynistic. The far left's vision of masculinity is be more like a woman. And that doesn't work either. There are distinct issues facing men, and masculinity and young men. Young men have fought and won our wars. Young men have built some of the most amazing structures in the world. If our women aren't going to flourish, our country's not going to flourish if young men are flailing, are floundering. And who wants more young, economically and emotionally viable men? Women. How many times have we heard, I know all of these amazing women who are intelligent, smart, have their act together, but they can't find a man. Well, yeah, they can find a man. They just can't find a man they want to date. Men made socioeconomically, horizontally and down, women horizontally and up. And when the pool of horizontal and up keeps shrinking, there's less household formation, there's more loneliness. 60% of able-bodied Americans 30 to 34, 40 years ago had 1 child in their house. It's dropped to 27% because 1, people don't have the money to have kids, and 2, they're having trouble finding a viable partner. This is something that affects all of us. We should let nothing get in the way of women's progress. It's wonderful. But there needs to be more empathy and a recognition that empathy is not a zero-sum game. Civil rights didn't hurt white people. Gay marriage didn't hurt heteronormative marriage, nor does acknowledging the issues that struggling young men are facing and weighing in with programs and celebrating how wonderful our young American men can be. That does not in any way take away from the challenges and the wonderful progress women have made. Empathy is not a zero-sum game.
I love it. I think you're right. I see it and hear it all the time, whether it's around my kids and their colleagues or people who discuss this with me on the hustings. I just hope the campaigns are listening, and we'll see what they do with it because you're giving them some wisdom. Scott Galloway, thank you. Pleasure as always.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. What do you think of what Professor G had to say? What do you think about what it means that they took out the head of Hamas? Time for you to have your say. 844-968-7720. People keep saying, why do I take calls? What matters more? I want to know where your head is. Let's get after it. In the break, I was discussing what I care about most, which is my back fat, Dusty, and how my kids will grab me by the back fat.
Mine grabs me from the stomach.
Please.
Yeah, trust
you
me.
have no body fat.
Stop. Yes, I do. Let's not talk about it. I can't. I'm old and fat, so let's go on. Okay, it's Jan. Jan from Las Vegas.
Jan, what's your question?
First of all, that's TMI. But
that's nothing.
That,
go ahead.
TMI. Again, I spoke to you when you were in Israel last year. I have family there. No one's in trouble, thank goodness. But I'm afraid with this Hamas 7th century barbarian mentality of animalism, the first thing they're going to do is retaliate. And the fastest will be with the hostages, if there are any still alive.
But here's the problem with that.
What do you think?
Here's my problem with that. Yeah, I get the suspicion, and it's dark, and it's frightening, and we don't want to jinx anything, of course. All those qualifiers aside, they have to know if those hostages are gone, so are they. If there were a mass event involving the hostages that are believed to still be alive, American and otherwise, it would be the type of retaliation, the lack of restraint. People think this is genocide. I don't even think it's close to qualifying. But those hostages are all they have keeping them alive. So I think it's a dicey proposition for them to do that. Hopefully they don't. Next.
A man with very little fat, Mr. Positive. Greg?
Mr. Positive. He sounds chubby, but maybe he's not. What's your question?
Hey, Chris, I hear you're hosting a town hall with J.D. Vance next Thursday. That's going to be off the shizzle, my friend. I cannot wait, my friend. I love it. Hey, I got to ask you, make sure you ask him this.
Yes.
How can Trump and Vance deny their involvement with Project 2025 when supporters of theirs are behind it?
You know, here's the thing. It's a boogeyman, Mr. Positive. These are traditional conservative notions of reducing the footprint of government. I'm not saying I like them. I think they're easy to campaign against. Trump, I never heard of it. Yeah, he's lying. Okay, maybe he didn't look at it and review it because he doesn't like to read. But they know that it's their guys. But I'm not afraid of the ideas. You know, what we want is for the best idea to win. And I'm actually, I didn't even talk about doing the Vance town hall tonight because I care more about the other stories that we had on. But, you know, good for NewsNation for setting it up. Good for the Trump-Vance campaign for taking the opportunity. I mean, this is crazy. This place has an overweighted independent audience. I mean, and it's such a tight election. I can't believe Harris, Trump, Walz, and Vance aren't all clamoring to get on in this last 2-week stretch. So I'm happy that Senator Vance has taken the opportunity. We'll let the people set the tempo, and I'll be there to move it along. And I think it's a great opportunity for the voters. Next.
Okay, next. I shouldn't do this. Fran, question and answer in 40 seconds. Go.
Done.
Hi. I'm Kamala Harris. It's hard running for president when you're vice president. She's smart enough to answer some questions. Where she did change her stance on issues, they came down on her as well. Mm-hmm. But that was her way of saying what didn't work.
Maybe. I don't think you have to justify it. Look, this is politics, okay? And you have the campaign for a guy who is a known prevaricator, dissembler, and liar saying Harris doesn't like to answer questions. You know, for me, it's like, come on, man. You know, have some sense of kind of like, you know, you're who you are and what you are. Look in the mirror. But that's why people are having such a hard time here. Harris is unsatisfying. I get it. But compared to what? Trump is one of the least popular people we've seen in modern American politics. It lets you know how low the bar has gotten. And we'll see which way it goes. We'll live it together. All right? Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.